do that.
In the absence of Commissioner Unum being with us in body, although she is telephonically here, I will go ahead and read the statement of announcement notice. A meeting notice announcing the date, time, and place of the March 19th, 2020 Commission meeting was distributed March 17th, 2020 to appropriate media and other groups or individuals who have requested notification. The announcement and agenda were posted at the Department of Disabilities and Special Needs Central Administrative Office and on the website. The public has been notified that accommodations such as interpreters, mobility assistance, or other assistance will be provided to individuals with disabilities and special needs if requested in advance. The next item is the adoption of the agenda. There are two proposed modifications under new business. The first is the Self-Advocate of the Year Award has been removed from the agenda. The next is the update on Brain Injury Awareness Month that would be presented hopefully at the next meeting pending the situation with the pandemic. Both of those modifications are basically in accord with us trying to reduce the number of people who are here as opposed to any active new business. Does anybody else have any proposed amendments to the agenda as proposed? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to approve.
That's so moved, Chairman.
Second.
All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The agenda is approved as modified. Next, we call upon Commissioner Thomas for the invocation.
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this opportunity to be here to discuss things of critical importance. Father, we especially ask your guidance and direction and help concerning this terrible virus that is going through the world, that we have mercy. And we thank you so much for giving us life. It's a time like this, we even more appreciate life that you have given us. For it's in your holy name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Next on my agenda is the introduction of guests in the room. It's all DDSN folks, but we'll go ahead and start with Pat and Fern.
DDSN.
That's DDSN. Lori made us DDSN.
Robert Gray, DDSN. Chris Clark, DDSN.
Thank you. We welcome those who are in the adjunct room, even though you're unable to introduce yourself at this moment. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the February 20th Commission meeting. Does anybody have any proposed changes, amendments, or corrections to those minutes as proposed? Hearing none, but entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, that is approved. Next item on the agenda would be public input. We had no request for public input. Again, I think in line with the guidelines that we're trying to reduce the number of people. So there's no public input. Commissioner update. We'll start with Commissioner Thomas. Any update?
Yeah, I was able to attend the finance audit training on February 27th here at DDSN, and it was very helpful and insightful to see how particularly new finance directors, boards, or executive director of boards might come to that meeting as well, or kind of being introduced to being trained in our audit system and requirements. So that was very helpful. And as I learned more about DDSN, and then also attended later that day Thrive Upstate Board meeting in Greenville, which is just another opportunity to learn about boards and what types of decisions and things they're making and things going on. So that's my update.
Commissioner Muffers, any update?
No, right now.
I would just say,
I apologize. Could I just say one quick word to the group? How much I appreciate Mary Poole's quick response. Whenever I send her something, even if it's kind of out of the blue and at odd hours, I always get quick response back. She is so helpful, and I just want to tell you thank you, and I very much appreciate your leadership.
Welcome.
You're doing a great. Even hey, welcome to another emergency. You said it's a Hurricane Mary or something.
Thank you.
That'll be next.
That'll be nice.
Okay.
When they named one after me, we were in big trouble. I'm way down in the alphabet.
For my purposes for updates, last week I was able to attend the Human Service Providers Association conference for one day on Tuesday. I got to sit in on several of their presentations. Felt like it was a good thing. I think that was the first time a commissioner had been to that meeting by what everybody was telling me. It was nice to see everybody in that environment, and I actually did hear some very positive messages with regard to things like fee for service and
Oh, good.
final rule and things like that. They were definitely confronting that. There was a lot of trepidation from the audience. There's no question about that, about some of the changes, but there was also a lot of positive messages that were being delivered. And I just wanted to express my appreciation to them for that invitation, allowing me to attend that. Next time on the agenda is the Finance and Audit Committee update. Commissioner Blackwood.
Okay, so the subcommittee met, the Finance and Audit Subcommittee met on March the 4th. And we had a really good informational session by Pat Riley on the contract compliance recoupments. It's a really complicated situation, issue that basically involves contractual compliance process and how DHHS is requesting recoupment when certain, I would say, processes aren't followed correctly or things of that nature. And so we talked a lot about that and had really good discussions on moving forward with this, this kind of issue of recouping some of the payments. And so we left that topic as the DSN was going to put together some clear directives, a program proposal about how to move forward with DHHS on this issue, share that with us, and then upon our approval of that, they would go to DHHS with that and hopefully get some agreement in how we want to approach this topic of recoupment. It's a 10-year legacy problem, and it's time to address it and to come up with some good solutions to this issue. So that was the update on that particular topic and next steps. The other item that we spent some time on in our meeting were the DSN board's audit directive. The directives were made available for public comment. We had gotten some comments when we had our subcommittee meeting. Chris was going to take some time to look at those comments, talk with the providers that provided those comments after we met that day. And so he has provided us the edited directives in our binder here under tab 3, I believe, that we'll want to vote on. They have been updated based on public comments. One particular area of discussion was mandatory training for auditors. Chris went back and forth with a few CPA companies on that mandatory option and settled on not mandatory, but highly recommended to have that training. Overall, I think that the directives, are providing more clarity to the audit process and help position DSN to be a little bit more, have a little bit more faith in the auditing process. My understanding through Chris's direction and personal experience and understanding is that CPAs are self-police, they self-peer peer review only. And so there's just so many areas of, you know, so many places for things not to be buttoned up and done correctly. And so I wanted to make a motion, if there's not any discussion, on approving the directives for the DSM Board audit directives.
And I have not read the directive, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, is it a long directive, or I don't want to have to make you go through it, so
It's pretty long. I think it's about 13 pages maybe.
Commissioner, do we do the audit, and you may have said it, and it
Let's
just
do
went
that.
in one ear and out because I was looking and kind of reading while you were talking. Do we have an outside firm do it, or is this done by a federal government agency? How is this handled?
I'll let Chris.
Yeah, what it is the DSN board's contracted an outside auditor to do the audit, and then the results of that audit are provided to us. Is that
Correct. So the state agency audit, I'll be glad to address that separately. This particular directive, we are mandated by Medicaid and other outside regulatory bodies to ensure that our provider network receives audited financial statements.
This is strictly a financial audit, it's not a performance audit in any way, right?
There are some agreed upon procedures built into this, and what those are, there are audit level services that are required and mandated for each provider to have completed by an independent CPA. They are targeted procedures that don't typically fall within a financial statement audit arena. For example, we asked them to look at our Medicaid billing, to look at room and board, compliance with direct care wage mandates that we have. You know, the state gives us money and says you have to pay $13 per hour.
These guys are familiar with the whole history that you have told us about over the past few years, so they kind of know what has happened.
Yes and no, that's one of
Generally.
the mandatory or highly recommended training. This is a very unique industry, and folks are out there auditing banks and counties and school districts and universities and hospital systems. So there's all these industries. There is no resource for these CPAs to get their knowledge other than their clients. So we've identified that a lot of our provider network don't have a lot of background either. So
Yeah, the finance
we're trying to
directors.
step up and provide
Teach the auditors how to audit us,
not how to audit.
how to audit
They know the
us.
audit. We're talking about specific rules, different terminology, and different unique idiosyncrasies related to our system. For example,
Yeah,
Medicaid waiver,
yeah.
direct bill, and Medicare Part D, and respite recoupments, and assistive technology reimbursements. There's all these weird things. And if I'm an auditor, I'm like, what do I do with this? I don't have standards or anything that tells me how to handle these things.
Bills
We're trying to drive continuity and quality.
The payments out, as you explained, one thing, they get a handle on that, but where the income comes from and how it comes is a different animal. So they didn't rebel and say, is this a new auditor we have on board? Is this the first time?
These are all public. All the 39 providers we have, 38, 39, they all have to go out and engage an audit firm.
And what we found in the past, Commissioner, is that we have some of them who there are certain auditors, some of whom now are employed by DDSN, who've been doing this for a long time and are very familiar with intricacies. And then they might contract with a CPA that does one of these every 10 years. And that's the problem. There was a wide differential in what their background, what the independent auditor's background was. We're trying to
All right, so
raise everybody.
auditing that is being done, Chairman, Commissioner, the auditing that is being done, is the audit for the entirety, or is it for the 38 entities?
38.
Who does us? Who does
Address
the,
that
you
separately.
getting there?
Yeah, I can
Is
do
it-
that.
Okay.
But we also have the next directive, just so we don't have to, we have a separate audit directive that addresses our contract service providers. Those are the providers that are not aboard, okay? There's lots of those. And the smaller entities under $250,000, they don't have to do anything at all. Those that go over $250,000 in revenue have to have an agreed upon procedures engagement done. And if they're a residential provider and go over $250,000, they have to also have an audit done. As to us, we are a state agency. We are included in the state's audit. The state auditor comes in here and performs audit
Okay,
procedures
okay.
on our agency.
Okay.
And just by way of reference, one of the first things when I joined the commission was a true audit of the agency hadn't taken place in decades, at least 20 years, because it wasn't required by the state. So we actually had an actual audit, a full financial audit done, just to sort of see what was out there, and everything came back okay. But it's sort of a different, under the state side, we sort of get a different look at than what we're actually asking.
Do we do a full audit every year, or is it just once every?
We're not required to.
Got
We're
it.
not required to. We just have to follow. And that was one of the things. For decades, it had been, we were not required to have a full audit. Therefore, we had not done that.
It would be costly, I would think it'd be.
Yes, it was costly and difficult but necessary, because again, it just hadn't been done in so long.
We don't have an executive directive or a commission determination about how often a full audit on the downtown group would be? Like once every 3 or once every 5 or something like that?
We've been in compliance with the state requirements.
But another thing that we've done that's a little bit different, we've taken our own internal auditor and redirected him to be looking at the systems because in this agency, he's been out in the community doing audits on checkbooks and things like that for a very long time, where we found lots of systems that were kind of leaking revenue. We wanted to test, what do they call it, controls within each body of work that we do. So that's what and he reports to y'all and to me. And so we have kind of not reassigned him, but redirected his efforts to truly do internal audit here. So as we develop new systems to kind of fix the 10 years of stuff that we're doing, he's going in and testing them to make sure that the stuff that we're doing is accurate and we're not missing something. So that's kind of a look behind that we have never done in this agency that we're doing now. But the reports from the providers, if I am not wrong, you correct me if I am, the information that we get in those audit reports is what we need to do our cost reporting. So the better information we get in, the quicker and more accurate our cost reports are. And that is a very important component of this agency, because that's how we reconcile with Medicaid, where most of our dollars are. So
All their costs are rolled up into our cost, and we file a statewide series of cost reports for different programs. We have to sign under federal penalties of perjury and jail time that the costs are accurate, and I'm not willing to do that with some of the quality that we're seeing. So it's a big reason why we're stepping up our game here to make sure we're getting good information. You know, I'm a seasoned auditor. I've been doing this stuff for 30 years, and so when I look at an audit, it's pretty easy for me to tell.
You're over 30 years old? You're taking some good medication.
Like 130.
we've known each other for 30 years, so yeah, he is.
Guess your age to be 35. That's pretty impressive. Whatever you're doing, you're doing a good job of it. Is it, would it be? Would it be?
Yeah.
That
was funny.
Kind of a slightly out of here. Now I'm finished with this, Chairman. This is it on the question. Is it? I recall going to, when I was in the Senate, I'd go to a number of conferences and that sort of thing, especially on insurance issues, Bank of Insurance Committee. And you would find some very interesting things on insurance stuff that you could apply back home that perhaps you weren't doing. Do you find when you go to, or maybe you haven't been on board long enough to have gone to national meetings and things like that, where you confer and they say, nuance here, that if you incorporated this nuance in the federal law, under the regulation that governs so-and-so, then, that could help us. I mean, have you found that there's that kind of world available to you, and do you have access to it?
Barry's focus has been trying to get us all involved more at a national and regional level, not stay within the state. Even as a provider network, trying to push that. So as we attend these things, we do find variety of opportunities.
Well, I encourage you to do it.
For growth.
I encourage you to do it. You may be, I was always surprised. You'd go to these conferences thinking it's a waste of time. And if you went to the conferences, I mean, not play, you go to the meetings and go to the subcommittee meetings, and they have 4 or 5 things going on, and you could kind of pick where you wanted to go. I learned a lot, and I took a lot of it back home to Columbia and tried to incorporate some things, and I could just imagine on a departmental level, as nuanced as this stuff is, and boy, it's layered. I mean, it's layered like I can't believe how interlaced everything is. If maybe you'd run across some things every time you go to something, particularly because things change so fast. I mean, you know, you get a reg change in DC, and they send out the bulletin, but you know, oh, that would have helped if I had known that. And it's kind of like IRS regulations, it seems to me like. So I just encourage, I mean, I think it's a great idea, Mary.
And we do, we send folks out, but I just want to assure this commission that if I've got a research project to do to find something out about someone, there is nobody better than Chris Clark. To be perfectly frank, he stays on top of all the IRS codes, he stays on top of all, what do they call it, GASB, FASB, all that stuff. But, you know, he stays on top of that. One, as the fact that he's a licensed CPA and he needs to do that. But even when he was in the provider network, when we were looking at how do we calculate something or how do we do something, he would always come up with the research to back his comments. So I'm really very, very happy that he's here because he does keep us on that cutting edge of what needs to be done. He could teach those classes.
Don't give him any ideas.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to go to a little bit, you know, but his presentation's a little boring, but that's, you know, I wasn't going to say that. You pushed me there, Chris.
So
I think that we do. But I'm telling you, he's the go-to guy on this stuff by everybody.
Yes, there's much to learn, actually.
Mhm.
The other thing I just comes to mind as we're thinking through this directive and the changes, this has not been updated in many years, correct?
Well, Kevin has an internal audit, used to own this directive and moved it to my area. Internal audit, they have a lot of competencies. One thing they don't train on though is accounting standards. That's not what they do. They look at fraud and misappropriation, internal controls, things of that nature. So the directive was lacking in the accounting standards aspects of the directive, which is why we needed to move it, because the issues I was having mainly is the accounting that's being done, the lack of proper disclosure, the lack of pulling in entities that should be consolidated or blended into the audit that are missing. We've got some pretty big basic issues that we're trying to address. So that's the main reason is it does get updated every year. So you're going to see this annually with little tweaks. We're in like a 2 to 3 year phase in. We've got other ideas to strengthen this, but we didn't want to overwhelm the provider network and the CPA network.
Would we be with this directive, Chairwoman, would we be bringing ourselves into kind of an overlay that is the same as most of the other states, our organization and most of the others? I mean, is this not, I don't understand why it's not cookie cutter. I don't understand why what's done in North Carolina, you know, this is the standard and this is what everybody should be doing. It should be done like this. You're saying it's not, apparently.
Well, the issue is every state has a payment system and different waivers and different services within the waivers and different state funded services that are offered. And so they're even state to state, even though we're all Medicaid agencies, the needs and the uniqueness of us is still out there.
the issue is we're a cookie. North Carolina is a cake. I got it. Pie. Okay. Somebody out there is baklava. I mean,
But you would think that
Right.
a county
I have
is
to
a
go to
county.
baked goods with him.
You would think a county was a county. Get the
No,
donuts.
but I think the accounting standards are universal.
Yeah.
But as it applies within our particular system is really the trick. And that's where the gap is that we're trying to fix with the training in large part.
And more clear directives.
And more clear directives, exactly.
Right, and a little bit more, as you recalled, maybe tough, stringent, and we can always revisit after a year of them being in place to see what you said, you want to start seeing better audits. Until you start seeing that, then we can go back down and maybe relax a few things or not be as,
Well, we need consistent information, otherwise we can't do our cost reporting. So we have to have that. That's the.
You're pleased with this then,
Yes.
right?
Oh, yes, I'm very good with this. It's long overdue. I'm watching us struggle. We keep coming back to our cost reports. And I say to you every time, FY17 is close, but we're not there. We just got the final draft and it's not correct. And Chris is catching that. But a lot of it has to do with the way our information comes in and how one board will do it this way, another board will do it this way, and he's having to pull those costs and try to figure that stuff out so we can get accurate reporting. I don't want to send something over to HHS and say, this is done right, and here you are, and we're there, because we're also building the model for the future so we can knock down these other things quicker than how long it's taken us to do this one. So consistency is really important. So we know that a potato is a potato is a potato. We're pulling that. I stayed away from the baked goods because I know how you are.
Yeah, I know.
So I'm staying, but we need to make sure that we're pulling the same cost from everybody. Is that the English version of what you say?
Analytics are more difficult too. When I'm trying to compare boards and look at things
Right.
analytically and see where boards are, if I don't have consistency in what I'm looking at, then it's not going to be very reliable.
Does this, no, I'm not gonna answer that question.
Okay.
well, I'm just going to say to you that we, in one of the, we've been talking about this for a few months now in our finance and audit subcommittee meeting. And there was even talk about requiring the boards to get 3 bids for audit.
Well,
What was it?
what we're looking at, the next phase may usher in mandatory auditor rotation, which is a
Yes.
thing.
Yes,
Um,
very
you know,
important
we've
thing.
got to figure out the proper way to implement that because there are some very distinct negatives to mandatory auditor rotation. But we've got some providers that have been at the same firm since they opened their doors. Now, they may have been through a very variety of mergers or splits, and they might be named the same thing, but it's the same as that firm. I mean, I know of several.
The same exact people doing it every year too.
We've got
Well, they can be good and can be bad.
Correct. There's a balance. And so,
Yeah.
they're already, CPA services are exempt from the procurement code, even at the state level. But we highly recommend that they solicit quotes and they don't engage in auditor any longer than 5 years at a time. That's been in the directive for a long, long time. We didn't have that.
Chairman, no more questions from me. Thank you, thank you.
We had a motion coming out of the Finance and Audit Committee for approval, and we're talking about 27504 DD, which is the one that relates to the DDSN boards.
Yes.
And so we treat that as a motion and a second. The only other thing that, and not to beat the dead horse, where we left that coming out with what was approved, there was going to be this, we're going to have some potential changes that needed to be, that were not necessarily what was approved by the subcommittee based upon the feedback that we were getting.
He sent those to us
Right.
Saturday.
Can you give us a quick summary of any major changes that happened? Major, I'm not talking about minor tweaks.
Substantive changes made were taking out the mandatory auditor training. That was highly questioned by everyone that commented, including the 2 audit firms. Now, those 2 audit firms, one's a former firm of Mary's when she was at York. And so these folks do a lot of DSM board work. So they weren't some firm out there that not that their work's perfect, they got some things to do too. But the fact that those firms that are so involved, they're like, why is this mandatory? We do this all the time. So I felt like in our next phase, the directive for next fiscal year that I want to look at how, when we make highly recommended, how many people actually attend. Do we have to make it mandatory to get the right people in the room to learn? Substantively, that was really the only major issue. There were really some needs for clarification. So that was a lot of the problem I had with this directive when I was in the auditor world, is I couldn't read, the internal auditor's mind. I'm trying to interpret what the heck he's wanting me to do because it's not clear. And so I had some of those same issues and some of the new stuff I added. So we just cleaned up some of those things.
Any further questions? Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of approving 275-04-DD as proposed by the Finance Committee, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that is approved.
So the next item that we also have in our binder under tab 3 are the QPL audit directives, which were also made public comments, of which we didn't receive. Chris, I'll let you maybe talk about what changes you might have made on
So,
that and how.
These two directives are unique. That's why there's two of them and not one, to cover both entity types. But they're very similar. There's a lot of content that's overlapped within the two directives. And so to the extent we updated 04, we had to update 06 for those same exact issues. There were nothing else changed unless I needed to bring it in line with the other changes in the other directives.
So I think for today, we wanted to, I wanted to make a motion to approve those directives.
And again, coming out of the Finance and Audit Committee, we'll treat that as a motion in a second. Any further discussion in regards to 275-06-DD? Hearing none, would entertain a motion to approve, well, I already have a motion to that, sorry. All in favor of approving the motion, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, 275-06-DD is approved. Anything further with regard to the Finance and Audit Committee?
No, we've got updates on several other items, but nothing to.
Okay.
update on.
Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is the Policy Committee update. Recognize Commissioner Malphurs.
Thank you, sir, very much. The policy committee has met on the second Tuesday of last month. And we have two policies that are now on the internet for public review. We have extended that comment period until April 8th due to the virus situation. The first directive has to do with the electronic communication policy. There's very little change to that except for the length of public comment, which we'll get into the reasons for that more later in the next policy committee meeting. The second policy relates to the maintenance policy for the contract houses and a few day programs that DDSN owns. It's about 60 facilities total. The purpose of the changes the purpose of the consideration of change for this committee relating to that policy change, to that policy, maintenance policy, is some people would say is to make things more fair. I don't like the word fair because I really don't think anything in this world is fair. I don't think it's fair that I have a disability. I don't think it's fair that anybody has a disability. It has nothing to do with, truly to me, the word fairness is the wrong word to use. To me, the best word to use is, it's much better to use the word impartial. And the committee is very concerned about these policies being impartial as much as possible henceforth. And that is the primary reason for these changes. And the word impartial simply means treating all equally. And in this policy, we have 55 providers total that are in our network that relate to residential programs, as far as I understand, and 27 of them benefit from this policy, but the others don't. And that is 6.3% of the facilities that benefit from this maintenance proposal right now, and the rest don't. And that is not impartial in my definition of the word impartial. And we need to be impartial not only to all providers, but to all the clients that we serve. And a final draft of that policy will hopefully and expected to be available for vote next month at this meeting, and obviously we'll be working on it more at the next policy meeting. The next policy meeting is second Tuesday in next month. And the last thing is that we did agree on a list of priorities for the directives, and we're working through those as diligently as possible, understanding that there could be changes to that list from time to time, depending on this severity of need to address a certain issue or another. And don't expect all those policies to be done overnight. There's a lot of them and a lot of work to do. Another story in and of itself. Now, if there's any questions about the direct, I doubt there will be today, but if there is any questions about the directive, I may or may not answer it. I may let Susan answer it, so if she wants to come up, she can stand there in case there is, but I don't know if there is any questions about
Any discussion from the group?
any discussion.
Any questions regarding the policy agreement?
I mean, I'm happy to take it and I may give it to her, but I just wanted to.
It's still under construction.
Right. So there's no vote today. It's just, I'm just really information, but it was very important information to me to give out. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Malphurs.
Appreciate it, sir.
All right, moving on to the next item under old business would be the case management update. Lori Manis.
Good morning. I just wanted to give you my monthly update on how the case management fee-for-service implementation is going on. We're continuing to provide technical assistance related to the invoicing process, and we're still having conversations with people who are at or below the previous 60% payment. The numbers you guys have in your packet for February were kind of consistent with where they were February last year. It went down a little from January, but still, doing much better than they had been. There was a rate increase implemented for waiver case management on January 1st. That rate increase continues in this month, only being like a 0.85% difference in the average monthly revenue per person for waiver case management. The billing errors in the Medicaid eligible continue to be very minimal. We did look at the number of people without a reportable activity in February, and that number went way down from where it was in January. If y'all remember, we had a big spike. So we really just think that was maybe an anomaly in January. We looked into it. We did have a good number of enrollments, and sometimes it's a little tricky to get the monthly contact in when people get enrolled late in the month. So hopefully, that was just something that happened, but it represented 3.48% of the waiver people in the system. We are going to have some challenges in case management during the coronavirus outbreak and social distancing. Reductions in face-to-face visits are going to result in providers being unable to bill at higher rate for waiver case management. Obviously, we're hopeful that that will offset though, because you'll be able to do more non-face-to-face if you're not spending time doing that travel to bill a higher rate. There are some compliance issues related to required face-to-face contacts. We've been using our existing case management policy. Luckily, there's a little blip in the policy related to exceptional circumstances, which obviously we are in right now. And it basically says that you can do a non-face-to-face contact in lieu of a face-to-face contact when there's an exceptional circumstance. So we kind of sent that out to our providers, and we're encouraging them to use that where necessary, to not make face-to-face visits. We're also in constant consultation and conversation right now with the Department of Health and Human Services about some federal things that will allow us to relax some requirements. I'm sure Mary will talk more about that later, so I'm not going to get into any specifics. As far as provider terminations, we still only have 3 providers that have terminated their case management contracts. The last one was effective at the end of August. We've been able to transition all those to new providers. We're still in contact with people who are kind of making decisions right now, and the implementation of conflict-free case management is obviously going to impact providers' decisions. I think the current crisis has kind of slowed the talking related to a lot of that, but, we'll still be working on trying to identify people who are in conflict and coming up with plans. We still have a transition plan in place with HHS that will be followed. Do y'all have any questions for me?
If you want to go into some of the specific things that we're requesting changes on, that would be fine, because I was just giving a generic overview of the Appendix K.
Sure. So we've been talking with HHS about kind of some things that are already occurring, as well as trying to anticipate some of the challenges that will happen based on social distancing, and trying to keep people as safe as possible. So what we've done is there's a thing called the Appendix K that Mary's going to talk about, and it's a way that a state can amend their waiver to kind of relax some of the requirements that the waiver has in place around services, how we deliver services, who delivers services, and just overall waiver federal requirements. So I'm not prepared to tell you everything that was in it, but I'll give you a couple of examples. So people who participate in waivers are federally required to receive a service every 30 days. Okay? What the federal government says is you got to be in need of a waiver service every 30 days. You have to be disenrolled from the waiver. So during this crisis, a lot of day programs are closed down. So for a lot of people, that's their only service. Well, if the day program's closed down and they can't get their service, or they're sick and they can't get their service, what we don't want to happen is for people to lose their waiver slot because of this crisis. So what we asked is for them to relax the requirement to receive a service every 30 days so that people will be able to maintain their waiver services, in the long run. Some of the other things are things like people who are in day services may have a parent who needs to work in a healthcare facility, right? Or something. And they were able to do it because they were taken care of in the day service. We have some limits on services, so what we asked was, could we relax those limits for people that are displaced from the day program in order to allow the parent, to maintain that level of service. Some of the other little things is like we have in place that you have to have a plan every year. Well, we have some ability within our policy to do plans telephonically. You don't necessarily have to see people face to face, but we want to make sure that if there's a situation where the family's sick and they don't want to bother with you right now, right? There's too much going on in their own lives, that we're able to extend some of those planned dates, have a little bit of wiggle room related to those. So those are just a few examples, but the Appendix K right now, we sent a draft over to Health and Human Services. We've been speaking with them daily. They've been great to work with. We've been sharing ideas between what's in their waivers and what's in ours, related to how we can help deliver services to people better. And my understanding is they are still reviewing the K, and we don't have the final draft yet. So those are some of the things I'm sure Mary will probably.
And we're getting guidance on things like electronic signature and using a verbal consent.
Sure.
And then after it's all over, you got to go in and you got to document, got to get it done, but you've got to document. And all of this is billable. So even though they, if you're talking on the phone, if you're updating a plan, whatever you're doing is a billable service. So I think the EIs are probably, we have a little bit more of an issue with early intervention at this point versus case management. It's not to say that it's not an issue, but case management has always allowed telephonic contact. So what we're trying to do is get a little more of a robust, if we could possibly do this versus telehealth, so we could also lay eyes on the actual individual. One of the problems I have is with nonverbal individuals, people who can't talk to you, that it would be better, you can't get an update from them over the phone. So if we could figure out a platform that is HIPAA compliant to be able to work with those folks, that would be a good thing. So I have some information about that I'm going to bring.
Yeah, some of the telehealth stuff is helpful too, because it allows you to bring teams of people together that you can't necessarily do on the
That's right.
telephone. You know, if somebody lives in a residential facility that DDSN operates and their family lives, you know, 2 counties over, and their, you know, their cousin, who's also very supportive, lives in another state, the ability to do kind of that virtual meeting allows you to bring all those people together and continue that continuity of the support of that person. So, you know, that's kind of what I'm doing. Do you guys have any other questions for me?
Just looked at the numbers for February, and again, realizing that things are gonna be totally out of whack for a while, but just looking at sort of the last month that we had this February, where things were reasonably normal. It feels like at the bottom, in that bottom quartile, kind of discarding a couple at the bottom who are apparently going to be content to be at the bottom, don't really care about them. But it feels like the numbers down there are a little bit higher at this point. I mean, I seem to recall when we first started that most of those bottom quartile were like in the 50s. 50s and 60s, and now it looks like more we're in like the 70s and 80s kind of number.
And
Are we seeing just even on the bottom level, they're starting to rise up a little bit?
So I think people are starting to understand the ability to bill for their service.
Yeah.
And I think the numbers are a really good gauge, but I think that you have to recognize that at some point you have to not compare the numbers to what we gave them, right? So let me give you an example. If I have an agency that's primarily made up of consumers who receive residential and day services, and I'm not talking about in the COVID world, I'm talking about in the
February.
normal. So if I have cases made up of people who go to my day service and go to my residential service, and the majority of them have been going there for years, right? One of the reasons that their numbers are in the 80s is because they don't need a lot. They just need somebody to kind of check on them, right? There's not as much activity. So that cost per consumer, we're trying to get providers to look at the cost per consumer to help them make decisions about caseload sizes. You know, the amount that we were giving before was an amount that assumed average caseload. Was it an average or a maximum caseload?
We said about 45.
There was kind of, when that number was developed, that 139, 33, it was developed based on 1 to however many. And so I think that amount really has to do with the types of people that people have. It's all about how much you bill for that person.
Yeah.
The issue too is, I think providers are really struggling to learn to manage the types of people that they have and to constantly adjust caseloads. And to be perfectly honest.
And when you say the
it's
types,
hard.
and when you say the types, you're talking about the employees, not the consumer.
No,
I'm talking about, well, I'm really talking about both,
Okay.
right? Because whenever you start talking about billing in a 15-minute unit, there are so many factors. You know, Mary could be the case manager for Johnny, who Mary has served for the last 10 years, and she knows Johnny and his mama and his daddy and his history, and Mary can do an assessment for Johnny much faster than if I pick up Johnny's case tomorrow. So there's issues related to that. And then there's issues of trying to get the right balance on caseloads of people who have more needs, i.e. have more billing, and people who have lower needs, i.e. less billing, and it's a constant flux, right? Because one day somebody could have very little activity needed, and the next day they could have a great amount of stuff needed. So the management of it's hard. It's not an easy thing for them to do. And so I think what we've seen over the last couple of years is providers really developing skills in order to be able to do that. And they've done a great job. I mean, if you just look at the numbers, they've gone up 2.5 times what they were doing. I mean, you know,
Oh, yeah.
they've gotten a lot better. So it's just gonna be one of those things where we continue to have to provide support to them. We have a monthly case management meeting. We use each other. We get a lot of ideas from providers. We try to offer support to them, and, you know, that's really all we can do.
I think we're changing a culture, and it takes time, but it seems like, and you're also managing differently. If I know that I have X number of dollars coming in because I have X number of cases, I budget that money, and I go from there. But if I am budgeting based on revenue, like most people in the world do when they own a business or something, your revenue's coming in, you're making ebbs and flows with the budget that comes in, they're starting to learn how to do that. And I think but I think that if we never went to the, and, you know, say this is what we're going, that we probably wouldn't have gotten this level of ability. And they're rising up, they're doing it. So, you know, they're getting management, and it's really a lot of management involvement. And when we said you had to look at your business model, we weren't joking. And we never said that it was going to be easy, but we see that that tide has turned to that way of looking at it. But now this happens. So this also changes a lot.
It's definitely going to be challenging
Mhm.
during this time. But at the same time, you know, if you have people who have specialized healthcare needs, you can increase the monitorship, at least telephonically with those people, so that you can make sure that families know what resources are out there, they have information about what's going on. You know, it would surprise, well, it may not surprise you, but it does surprise me how some people really don't understand. You know, my daughter's a school teacher, and on Monday, the principal like ran around and said somebody needs to change the sign. 5 kids got dropped off this morning. You know, I mean, there are people who really just don't have the information they need in the midst of this crisis to be able to handle it. So we're relying on our case managers to make sure that they're touching base with their families and giving them that.
And they can do that by phone, so it's working out.
Sure.
fine.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura.
And it's an important service, so that's a good thing.
Yeah, it is.
Mhm.
So we're good.
I am not Joyce Kimber.
Yes, so we recognize Mr. Britt for the update on the EI on the early intervention.
I'll be brief, and Joyce apologizes for not being here. She's the subject matter expert, so if you have poignant questions, we're going to have her come next month to really present. I just want to give a quick update on a request, EDSN board to exit or terminate EI from their service line. Fairfield County Disability and Special Needs Board serves approximately 11 children, and they've indicated that they just don't have the economy of scale to continue to provide that service. We feel confident that there are enough providers in that area to pick up those cases, so we don't anticipate any disruption in services other than another provider.
Other than the virus thing.
Yeah, and Pat's going to talk to really what all of our service providers are under a great deal of stress burden during this time. So, you know, a lot of things may be protracted out as a result of this because we really don't want families transferring to new providers, you know, operating that way. So we'll work with providers to do this thoughtfully and compassionately.
Any questions regarding that EI update? Thank you. Next, recognize Mr. Malley for a legislative budget update.
Good morning. EDSN presented a budget to the governor's office last fall, containing 11 items and $47.9 million. The governor approved all items except one. He did not approve the CPH2 development of 28 houses for $2.7 million. As we go through the budget process, we're trying to track the jiggle effect so that you can follow along. The first stop of the budget after the governor's office was the Customers Review Committee, and they added back the CTH2s, which was $2.7 million, but then they backed out approximately $3 million to kind of balance that, and they backed out $1.4 million of the Haskell waiver slots. They reduced $500,000 for post-acute rehabilitation, and they reduced the $1.5 million coastal powder grant. They adjusted it monetarily wise. I think from a pragmatic standpoint, the CTH2 houses are recurring money, $2.7 million, hopefully forever, and we're losing some one-time money. So I think that's a that is not harmful, and next step. And then the House took the House Ways and Means Committee recommendation and fully approved it, so it has passed the House. And the next step is the Senate Finance Committee starts in 2 weeks. And we'll give you an update there. So far, so good.
You know, Pat, you might as well just stay there. You're still up. Yeah, because we removed the next two items, and so we're on to, oh, I'm sorry, Chris, you're up next. I apologize. Financial update, I apologize.
The younger and smarter guys.
It's getting deep in here.
I tell you. You got no confidence today. It must be the virus.
Financial update?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right, if you look at tab 5, this is the standard format you guys have been seeing. We're still working on tweaks to this. Next month, we'll have a couple other beneficial changes to the format you've been seeing. The main thing, if I'm the commissioner, I want to look at is really the remaining budget column and where we are in total, because a lot of the programmatic allocations, we can just move funds around. That's not legislatively required. The adjustments column are things where we have to move funds around internally. So the real thing that I would be concerned about is how we're doing overall. But we can dig into the individual program areas. We did include a legend or a key, if you will. Hopefully, I think Sandra said it'll be in your package each month. Is that correct, Sandra? Which will help you navigate what these broad categories represent. If you need further information in your packet each month, you'll let us know. We'll work on that as well. But we are 3.74% below budget on our expenditures. And now, one thing for the new commissioners to recognize, we have $808 million, if you look under the adjusted budget column, under legislative authority. We don't fully put that in our spending plan because of our inefficiency in our billing. We can't draw down the full $808 million. So when we do our spending plan, we have to look at what we actually need and what we can actually generate in revenue. So we developed a $770 million spending plan. So compared to the spending plan, 3.74% below what we anticipated spending at this time of the year, which is about $29 million. And I'm going to, one of the revisions I'm going to have is have that number on here so that you can easily see it. So our cash projection, we continue to watch that every single month. Our latest iteration of this was actually a favorable adjustment as we continue to true up our numbers. One thing I will state is, when I got here, our former finance director did the best he could to come up with the tool to project cash flows, and we have taken what he developed and basically enhanced it and continue to improve upon it. So now we've got a monthly cash flow projection instead of just a year in that doesn't really have any monthly information in it. And so as we refine this, we are getting more and more accurate in our ability to project. And we are looking at, last month, we told you we're about $800,000 surplus we were projecting, cash flow was. The latest revision is about $2.7 million to the good. So a lot of it has to do with our efficiency in our billing as we focus more on driving billable units. Now, the thing I want to warn you about is with this situation we're dealing with now, day program's closing. We've got that money on the street. We pay providers in advance, but we have lost our ability to bill all of those services. There are pieces of those services, and I think Mary's going to get into that in her report, as we try to educate our providers and make sure they're thinking about things they can do to continue to bill and provide service. Well, we need to think about that too. I think there's a risk to think of billing as it's financial. Well, you can't bill if you're not providing a service to a family or a consumer. So when you hear numbers like that in billing, if you will, just kind of convert it to, making sure we're meeting the needs of our folks and that we're generating those services and trying to maintain those even through this. So we're not sure how it's going to impact us. While we are facing significant revenue reductions in our billing, for day services and EI and case management. As Rufus indicated, that is a stressor on our provider network. They are having to deal with, trying to stay in business and manage this themselves. So we're in a very unique situation that we're trying to keep an eye on by the minute. We're actively engaged and working as a team to look at our options. But the point I would like to make it here is there are various things that are being looked at the federal level, and things that have already been passed, in fact. The Families First Coronavirus Response Act was signed into law by Trump. Biggest thing that's in here for us as an agency, there are other things in here that we need to digest and provide to our provider network in regards to paid sick leave and things of that nature. But the main issue is they're going to reduce or increase the federal match percentage by 6.2% nationally. So what that means is that instead of us having a 70-30 split on our dollars, we got a 76-24% split on our dollars. And so they implemented that effective January 1. So they will retroactively basically reimburse us our state appropriation that we've overfunded at this point. So we're still trying to really identify how much money that's going to mean to us. It can range from $15 to $20 million in additional funding for us in this 6-month period.
On this, can I interrupt him and ask him a question? Well, has the Board of Economic Advisors given anything to Senate Finance about the impending shortfalls and stuff like that? Because they're probably going crazy over there at Senate Finance trying to figure out what this means for the numbers. And how the issue is how will it impact us? Will they go back and across the board cuts and all that kind of stuff that, you know, at a time like this, that's the kind of stuff they start thinking about.
I'm gonna let maybe Rob speak to that.
They're collecting that information right now, and right now what what they're doing is, they're getting some money to DHEC right now, and maybe some other agencies that are affected, by the COVID-19, trying to, follow the governor's ask for DHEC. They're dealing with that this week. And I think you're exactly right. The Revenue Fiscal Affairs Office, Frank Ringwater, they're helping.
What'd you call it? The
Revenue Fiscal Affairs Office.
Oh, they renamed it. Okay, all right.
Frank Ringwater's group, they are, readjusting.
I know him, yeah.
As they go, and I imagine Senate Finance is due to take up the budget, not next week, but the week after, provided, everything.
Well, the question is how seismic is it going to be? And how does it, from our perspective, how does it affect us? So the good news is 76, the issue, and I don't think, they can't raid that, right? They can't raid that, so that's good, but it's gonna, they may say, well, good, they got the extra money so they can afford for us to modify their budget so we can make up for it. So there's more than one way to skin a cat if they get in trouble. And I'm just trying to figure out what we're
Right,
doing.
those decisions, we're probably a week or so away from those.
Well, y'all will fill us in, I presume, to
As soon as we get something, they're not even talking about that yet. They were just moving the other funds out just to deal with the emergency.
Yeah,
But I'm sure on the other end,
yeah,
put funds out, but eventually you got to pay for it.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
and with businesses and taxes, if you close restaurants and you close businesses, you're going to lose taxes.
This was gonna be such a good year. This is gonna be such a great year. And boy, you talk about turning the tables on us. And I just will be stunned if it doesn't come back, Mr. Chairman, to, you know, if we have to have some emergency meetings about modification. So you better start looking to see what, you know, I don't know where they would pull it. And maybe we're exempt because of the nature of what we are. But I was on the finance committee and in that, you know, the executive committee, and I know how they start thinking. They don't have a choice. I mean, no criticism. They don't have a choice. They
Already started working on the production plan.
Yeah.
Part of our budget request is that we have automatic budget.
We have a
contingency
plan
plan.
with the state already as part of the annual.
Yeah.
like cutting the donut supply to.
Yes.
to-
We've already cut that just for, because
It's already cut back.
And And what they're doing is they're making adjustments based on on the extra money they get.
Okay, so you-
Maybe they don't have as much extra.
After, I knew it would be going on, I just didn't know if you maybe had some.
And they might revisit the budget, and we might not be seeing these things that were just absolutely wonderful this year, so.
Yeah. So
We'll get back.
As good as they were to us in the appropriations
It
process.
may not hold,
We have to take a
it
look.
may not hold.
Yeah.
Bad news, okay,
That's correct.
well, okay, thank you.
So that's, we should know that, like I said, Senate Finance is gonna be doing a lot of work.
Yeah, yeah.
Next week and the week after.
Yeah, I'm glad, I bet the House is so glad it happened after it left the House into
Well,
the
they
Senate.
haven't come back this week, though. They're coming back.
Didn't they, wait, it's not approved by the House yet?
It is.
The budget's not approved?
Yes, it is, but, they approved the budget, and what they're doing right now is, they're coming back to add in the governor's request.
Oh, yeah, but it's off their plate. It's
That's right.
basically, it's at the
That's
Senate,
right. They
Senate
were-
Finance.
Senate's problem.
They were taking a furlough week this week.
Yeah, Senate Finance has got it, and now they're gonna have to do the modifications, is what's gonna happen. Okay, thank you, Mr.
Senate
Chairman.
Finance approved the governor's, request on Tuesday. House is coming in perfunctory to do it today.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
thank you.
All right, and so, we've got a lot of moving pieces. We've got, things we may be gaining over here, losing over here. So as hours pass and more information becomes available, we will take the opportunity to look at our particular financial situation and see if there's any opportunity at all to help our provider network. Obviously, the commission would have to approve any plan that we put in place or recommend. For our DSN boards, they're paid in advance while they have some cost increases regarding staffing and so forth. The real problem is with our fee-for-service folks that aren't getting paid at all because it's based on service delivery, billable activities. So as we get this money and start determining what we're losing and what we're gaining, we will be considering suggestions for you all to consider.
Christian, don't forget now that from the federal level, I mean, they've got, what, $1 trillion in the bucket somehow. I mean, those guys should be the guys that, the providers that aren't able, those are the ones directly affected that ought to be able to apply. And maybe it's gonna end up being through the agencies, Mary, I don't know. But, find out where we have to get application for them for the losses like that. We don't want them going out of business. And
Obviously.
I mean, if it extends over 2 weeks and goes to 4, 6, 8, and some maniac was on, who's a big, he thinks quote, the world should be shut down for a month at home, a month. Nobody allowed to go outside.
Well, no.
That's almost hysterical, but hysteria is part of what we're facing here. I mean, an overreaction ends up with economic consequences beyond what anybody really thought could happen, and suddenly we got a real problem. So to save the providers could be one of the things you need to figure out is who to apply to get directed money to them, and whatever form has to be filled out for the grant to get to individuals. I don't know, maybe it goes to the Small Business Administration because that's how they were hooking it up at one time.
We've identified a host of financial resources. Rufus and Rob issue a situational report every day.
Yeah.
In fact, yesterday's went out with a bunch of links to SBA resources and different
Okay, you're on top of
unemployment
it.
insurance.
Okay,
and
you're on
business
top of it.
interruption insurance.
Okay.
funds. And we're trying to share as much information as we can.
Do you know if it applies to lawyers' offices? No, never mind.
In fact,
I hope so.
They have to pay.
I can't make a direct connection between it,
this act is riddled with a bunch of requirements on businesses with less than 500 employees required to pay sick leave and so forth. And then you turn around, the business gets their money through a reduction in their payroll deposits that they're making. So I think we've got to step up and interpret this and give some guidance at the state level for our provider network, because we've got a lot of folks operating these entities, particularly the small QPLs that aren't fiscal experts. So we've got to figure that out and get some guidance issued on that as well. So if you'll monitor our website, we've got a page out there as well. If you want to see the type of stuff we're doing.
Can I ask a question on that?
Yes, ma'am.
Has there been any consideration or legal interpretation given to who is a healthcare provider under the new statute? Because I believe there's an exemption or an exception for healthcare providers.
As it relates to.
The new sick leave and FMLA. Actually, I'm not sure if it's both the sick leave and the FMLA, but I think it's under the emergency FMLA, the new law that passed yesterday.
Yeah, I just printed the full act today, this morning. It's 35 pages, so I've got to go through it and read it and figure out how that applies. I haven't had time to really delve into it today. I'll certainly.
I've been looking at it overnight, and my trade association, the Council of Autism Service Providers, is considering engaging legal counsel to issue an opinion about who qualifies as a healthcare provider, meaning that they get an exemption from some aspects of this new law requiring sick leave or requiring emergency FMLA.
Yeah, we'll have to look at that. I mean, I don't know if they're thinking more hospital workers and people that are in the direct line of taking care of folks that have this virus. But we will certainly look at that and seek guidance if we need outside assistance.
I think the main thing is
awareness. The new legislation that passed yesterday says that the term healthcare provider has the same meaning as under the FMLA. And FMLA defines healthcare provider as a doctor of medicine or any other person determined by the secretary to be capable of providing healthcare services. And includes a whole other list, including psychologists, chiropractors, nurse practitioners, nurse midwives, clinical social workers, physician's assistants, et cetera, et cetera. So it's pretty expansive.
If you have any information on that, if you could forward that to Mary, I guess.
I will.
Thank you.
I will. I mean, I definitely do not have it all figured out yet. So with that disclaimer, I'll forward over.
Okay. Stand that.
So that was my financial update. Sorry it was long. I just wanted you all to have, some idea of where we were headed with this virus.
well, I wanted to get a piece of clarification if you don't mind. You're saying that we are doing well with our spending, and we are 3.7% below what our projected was at this point. And you said that was $29 million less?
Right, so we're having revenue problems. We've expressed that for years here. We're trying to address that with Health and Human Services. Part of our dilemma is we don't have cost reports to back up what we're trying to do, so.
Yeah, I know, thanks to the person that was in your job last before you.
So the billing efficiency, we are managing expenses very, very well. The problem is we're not billing for, Rufus and his team. I want to give him kudos, and Lori, Ben Orner. There's a bunch of folks around here that are really working hard to hone in on our billing, to communicate things with providers, to give them information, to educate them. They need to up their game because pretty soon this is going to be their revenue stream, not ours.
Exactly.
So we've been trying to share that communication with the audience every meeting we have.
And the biggest thing they need to do is not panic and realize that we're here to help them and all that sort of thing. People don't need to be, this is not a time to panic. It's a time to look at things and see what we can do about it. every day it seems like the federal government's going to do something else for more people. So they don't need to panic until we figure out what the federal government's going to do. They're talking about $1 trillion package now. So, for a lot of different things. So, they're obviously going to be helping plenty of people doing a lot of things, including our providers.
I think the problem is, I know we need to get off this topic and wrap it up, but my issue as a small business owner would be, that's fine and dandy, but I need the cash now. If something's coming and it's not paid until June, that doesn't help me today. I'm probably closing out of business by then. So that's the real dilemma we're going to be facing. So to the extent we can step in and help or cash flow anything, I don't know when our cash is going to come in. I don't know what our billing's going to look like in March for these services. So
we can only flow what we have to flow, though.
What's that?
I said, we can only flow, we have to flow.
Correct.
Right.
And what's in our purview to do so too. We can't just write checks to people because we think we want to do it. So, and that is, when we start talking about the authorities under K, Appendix K, there's certain authorities that they have to work within. So you can't just pay for a service that doesn't occur, but you can maybe modify that service or modify the requirements around that service so that you can actually you can pay someone to do the service. But,
Talking about virtual activity and all that sort of thing
yeah,
too.
lots of things. There's
Right.
lots of different ways to do that. Okay, all righty.
Thank you, Chris.
No other questions?
Thank you, sir.
All right. Now I call Pat back up.
Are we going to make a motion to accept the
Oh,
finance?
yeah, thank you. Yes, would entertain a motion to accept the finance report as presented by Mr. Clark.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion with regard to that? Hearing none, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that finance report is accepted as presented. Thank you. That oversight. Now.
Good morning again. I'll start off by saying I'm not a epidemiologist, but
You play with me.
this is my courteous.
We sent them to a Holiday Inn last night.
Ron and Rufus helped put this report together. I'm gonna walk you through it. Hopefully it will generate enough questions and I think that will.
You're talking about this?
Yes.
Is that, okay.
We'll start with the first slide. I'll give a couple of context slides. There's so much data flying around out there, it's really hard to get some context as to where we are. And the best way we approach it is just to give you the facts of both the US snapshot and then the South Carolina snapshot. And I think this chart here is very telling. The first US case of the coronavirus was identified on January 19th. 59 days later, we have 6,500 cases. And that shows you, that chart there shows you the distribution of cases across the country and how it's different in different places. So, and you take that same thought process and you go to South Carolina. Our first identified case was on February 26th, a little month later. And now, 19 days later, we're at 47, and that was actually on March 16th. And as of this morning, we have 60 cases. That's a lot of data on this chart, but it just kind of gives you an idea of the daily distribution of cases. It also gives you an idea of the distribution of diagnosed cases and the counties that they're in. And the whole point of this is we're doing a lot of the mitigation measures based on national guidance and certainly government guidance. Here's the third slide, which is flattening the curve. Cautionary measures that we're going into place. This is the theory that we've been told, and it's probably not new to all of you, but I think this is a pretty good visual that, obviously we don't not really get anybody affected, so we take all the cautionary measures in that aspect. But at the same time, a lot of the measures that we're taking, and social distancing is just to flatten the curve so that we don't overrun the healthcare system. Specifically how this impacts BDSM. The drivers in our response were multiple, but I just want to start with the governor's executive orders, just so that it's been fast and furious for the last week. It's good just to look at the exact batting order of the guidance we've been given. Last Friday afternoon, state of emergency was declared. Nursing homes, assisted living facilities, they closed the public schools in 2 counties. And clear the state government will remain open. That's Friday afternoon at 4. Sunday afternoon at 4, we have another update, and we go from 2 counties to all schools in the state are closed. And he urged public gatherings less than 100 days later, it's elevated again. The main driver there is closing all restaurants. So you can see how quickly we went from a state of emergency to where we are today. So it's a rapidly evolving event that is now landing in South Carolina. And of course, now the question is, what is DDSM doing? Your next 2 slides, there's a lot of work on there. I think that's for you to read later. But let me sum up what these 2 slides are about. And this is just a chronology of activity. But when when I looked at it, that was a little busy, but I do believe you need to read it if you're interested. But if I can sum it up, from our perspective, when there was a national emergency, President Trump in early March, Lucas, and Robert Burney got the Emergency Operations Center rolling. We had internal meetings, we sent out all the information to the audit community, which is just basically mitigation with heavy emphasis, Mary would say, wash your hands. Very precautionary measures. As the month goes on, we start providing, I call it incremental escalating guidance. It starts out with just basically raising warnings to families and friends when visiting our consumers to self-monitor. Then that was escalated to, at the regional centers, now we implemented everyone entering the regional centers to have protocols for symptom checks. And just yesterday, Mary sent out a directive to, for our regional centers and the ICFs in the community that we will follow the governor's visitation and families visitation for nursing homes and assisted living, which is basically stop.
I said that for the centers. I did not say that for the providers in the state. They are pretty much following those protocols too.
He had recommended it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Obviously, as Mary's already talked about, Chris, there's a lot of effort put forth on Appendix K to bring latitude to the system to operate in this emergency. A number of steps to reduce risk to our staff. Following the governor closing all schools on Sunday afternoon. Sunday night, Mary sent a communication to providers and all day program providers serving over 100 people, including staff, closed. Anything under 100, we gave them strong guidance to consider the health and welfare of their consumers, consistent with the governor's direction. Obviously, 2 days later, it's escalated with the closing of on-premise restaurant dining, as well as the increased emphasis on social distancing. Tuesday afternoon, Wednesday morning, we implemented our protocols to increase telecommuting. On Monday, we identified everybody with a pre-existing health condition, pre-complications with the virus, and we telecommunicated on Monday. And then on Wednesday, we increased our staff with a target, initial target goal of having 40% of our central office employees telecommute in order to have just more social distancing. Direction we're going. Our challenge is not only to mitigate risks, we also have to maintain government operations. I think lastly, DDSN compared to, we're like a lot of other agencies that have a first responder mandate. It's not as visible to the community or other people that you serve. 24/7. We also have the community serving another 4,300 in residential settings, and they're all at risk of being impacted by the coronavirus. Mainly for the same reason hospitals are impacted is the risk of losing staff either through infection or self-quarantine. So we have to maintain our capabilities to monitor and respond. And so we're trying to the situational reports. Have you guys get the situational reports?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, I sent them out.
Yeah, there's a lot going on.
There's only been 2.
Both with good information as well as,
I got those.
I would call overload information. So we're hoping that ours strikes that right balance, so the provider can see that every day. And with the myriad of stuff that they're faced with, they can see somebody out here who has a little more time is synthesizing what we're seeing and getting them what we think is the most actual data for them. Consider an action. And so that's what we're in front of, and if you look at us for the next 2 weeks, we're just going to follow the governor's direction, maintain operations, and maintain the, it's the we're monitoring the situation, and from a emergency operations center perspective, what is going on out there. And there have a couple of observations in our statement report as to, we've got to separate substantive diagnosis and cases that impact us, but also, there's also the impact of a lot of activity that does not result in an actual diagnosis, but it may result in reactions to self-quarantining people, which, even though there's not the disease, it has the same impact on us on losing frontline DSP workers.
How many folks is in our system? What do we have, about 15,000 affected?
Yeah, well, most of our folks are in the home setting with their families. So the majority of the folks that receive supports in one way or
Right.
another or are eligible for services are in home settings. And there's another, I don't want to say a number because everything I say is policy, but what is the number in residential settings
We have 650
in the regional centers?
Right.
about 4,300 in residential services in the community,
Mhm.
and then we probably have another 10,000 at home.
In-home supports.
So about 15,000, okay.
Mhm.
Of that total population, because of what we have had to do, how many have been affected, perhaps are not receiving services or whatever, because it exceeds the number? What, have we determined, 2,000 people affected, basically suspended until all this is over, 500, none?
I think what we're getting now is anecdotal data, where from residential services, they are getting the services.
They're getting the services.
Sure, yeah.
Day program, they're not getting the services because we closed them down.
And that's 4,000.
The day
No,
program
it's
service
more.
is,
Okay, the day programs also serve people in the community that live at home with their families, so they're not going to the day program, so it's going to affect those folks too. Do I have a number for you? No, I do not. If you want one, we can get that.
So if you can get a number.
But what we're trying to do is, and one of the reasons we don't have a number, is because what we're trying to do is restore some of those services in various ways. So we're out there kind of either with our Appendix K, or we're actually instructing people to do this, to provide day services in the residential setting. We have got some smaller providers that I can go to somebody's home and provide service. As long, because that's what the thing that we're asking, as long as they're documenting the service provision, it's allowable, and they can get paid to do that. Now, the boards are already getting paid for the day services because we've already pushed that money out. So anything that we can recapture what they're doing would help make us whole, because we're the ones that are losing the money from the board side of it, and they provide the majority of day services. I don't think that's a misstatement. What's really going to be affected is people getting personal care aid at home, attendant care in the HASKI waiver, probably respite. Most of these folks, you got two sides of the story. The families are saying, don't come in, or you have the provider saying, I'm not going. So, my feeling is that there's nothing that says one-to-one services cannot continue. So there's not a ban on saying nobody can go do service provision in homes. You just have to, is somebody sick in your house? Do you have fever? Do you have cough? Have you traveled to a foreign country? Yada, yada, yada. You go down that list. Neither one of those things occur, you can still provide the service. So to get you an accurate number, I can't do that right now.
In Greenville County, for instance, there's one group that does about 800 folks. Now, they do it, as best I can tell, most of it is done as in a group setting, and I presume they've had to suspend or some sort of way spread it out somehow. Do we?
I just need to know,
How are
well,
they dealing with it?
are you talking about Thrive?
Yeah.
You're talking about Thrive, okay. All right, so say I need to know those specifics, otherwise I can't answer the question. They are a board, so they get the band payment, and they are providing residential services. So anybody in their residential programs are getting residential services like they would any other day. They have closed their day program. Now,
That's what I was referring to.
okay, they closed their day program, so if they have people that are in residential services that go to the day program, they can provide that day programming, the same service, they can go to the houses to do it. Because those people are living together anyway, okay? Now, the community people go in there, they've lost that daily activity of going from their house to the day program, okay? So they have lost a service.
So in theory, the Thrive can't bill for that then, because they.
Thrive has already been paid for that.
Oh, okay, but
We can't bill.
We can't bill for it, that's the
Future-
problem.
Yeah.
in the future, can
It
they?
would be that way if it was fee for service.
Okay,
They'd be in the same boat as although they could go to their residential services and still provide that service there. They would be in the same fix that EI and case managers are in right now. So that's the problem we have, okay? So, but they're not in that boat right now, so this is where we are today. They get paid for that service. They're not losing that funding.
If this goes on for another month or two, will they continue to get paid even though they're closed?
It's the contract we have with them. We have a contract. Now.
But it doesn't have a provision for if you're closed?
Well, you have an attendance thing, but we have typically in the past, if you're closed, like usually the extent of closures, Barry, to be honest with you, have been hurricane relocations or weather, snow and stuff you close, and it's a couple of days here, a couple of days there, but it is not this massive. So no, there's not a provision in there for that. Technically, you can use the attendance rule. But we don't want our providers going out of business. So what we need to do is figure out how do we provide a service in an alternate manner to recoup as much of that funding as we possibly can.
I wonder
I agree
if
with
beds allow for, I mean, in this case, there's so many modifications to be made, waivers, all right, if they simply allow the billing by us to continue, even though you have so many exceptions that are out there among the 15,000, maybe it's 2,000 are actually being serviced at this point, if we knew the whole story.
Well,
Then can we continue to bill anyway based on?
it really only affects us in the day program area because personal care aid is direct billed to HHS. So it's the personal care company that's going to own that. So if they fall in that small business category, they're going to have to handle that. Respite sitters, there usually is a family that employs them to provide the service. So it's still not going to hit DDSN. We're not going to pay for a service that we can't recoup. The only time we pay for that, actually the bands are out there. So respite's paid too. But yeah, so there's just so many complications. I don't even, basically with the day program is our biggest loss right now. What we are trying to do is get that money, get those service units provided in another manner, which we are doing with what HHS is allowing us to use that. I mean, CMS is allowing HHS to write the Appendix K to be able to say in an alternative arena, whether it's somebody's home or it is in the homes of themselves, the residential homes, we can still provide the service as long as we document the service. So that's where our problem right now is we pay in bands. Even for services that are direct billed outside of us, that is a problem we need to look at. And we also, and the day program, that money is already pushed out. On the good side, it keeps the boards whole. On the bad side, it could give us a real bad case of heartburn. So we got to figure out how to get the services out there as best we can. We also, and I was going to talk about this, but I'm talking about it now, so I don't have to talk about it then. We're trying to encourage people to think a little on the creative side. We know that boards are sending their lawn crews out. They're small groups of 4. And they're going out and they're still providing the service. Again, they're monitoring for symptoms, signs and symptoms. They're outside. This thing is not acid rain. It's not going to burn when you go outside. So it's a good thing for them to get outside and do this.
Exactly.
So they're still cutting grass. They're still working. They're still getting paid.
Exactly.
The individuals, which is good too. Other enclaves are working. There's boards and stuff that have contracts that have to get out. So what they're doing is they're bringing people back into their workshops in very small groups to work on the contract work that they were working on before. So they can get it out and the individuals get paid and that is all billable. So, they're doing what they should be doing as managers, trying to figure out what they need to be doing. And as long as they document the activity that is going on, we'll be able to recoup those funds for that. But I cannot tell you with certainty, we're in our, 4th day of lockdown. I made a joke in our house on the second day of lockdown, we already broke out the Halloween costumes. I was like, this is not going to go well from here. But we're in the fourth day with information that is coming in at us very rapidly. In fact, some of the stuff I'm going to talk about I got off the phone just 5 minutes before we came into this meeting. So that is, I can't give you with certainty those numbers, but we can push all that out as we get it and send it out. It doesn't have to be in a formal meeting. We'll do that in our situational updates to you all. So you get that. I wish I could answer it. I wish I could tell you it's going to be over in 2 weeks. I can't say any of that.
Try to get, you simulated a way maybe to put this in context. The fact that we have roughly 80% of our money in providers and bans, percent to providers fee for service. In the ban system, because we pay them in advance, the billing that doesn't go on, such as if people in residential setting went home, or we don't pay programs, DDSN is the one at risk. So in some respects, our ban system provides insurance policy to the boards.
Always been better for the boards.
Now, the 20% that are
Only better.
paid fee for service, they're the ones.
Much,
if
much better.
they can't bill it,
Ridiculously better.
they're gonna lose it.
Mm-hmm.
So when it comes to maintaining a provider network, the bans, even though we're absorbing loss, it does maintain the system during this crisis, and we can calculate those losses and try to address them. It's like Chris was talking about, the 20% of the providers that are just losing business. How do you measure that, and how do you address that? And I think that's one of our priorities, as to how to take all these federal programs and figure that out to see what relief we can give them.
And every day a new program is being announced. So that's the other thing, is just staying on top of this information the best we can. But we've got a pretty good partnership and a pipeline into HHS, so the information's flowing back and forth. And I'm pretty much on a national call every other day, which has given us some really good information from folks that were kind of like the tip of the spear when we talk about where these cases are. If you look at this, we've got 47 cases, okay? But if you look at Washington and California and Oregon, that's where it hit first. So they've kind of been in this game a little bit longer than we have. So we're learning from the things that they're doing, and basically all these ideas are kind of percolating up and around. But the good news also is CMS is not sitting on requests. They're getting them out quickly. So there's other requests to look at, the 1135, the 1115. Those are Medicaid requests, but we need to see what kind of authorities are in there that they can also make changes going down the road, because it doesn't sound like this is a one and done. It kind of sounds like, based on how long this is going to go, that you can take back that document, amend it, and get it approved again. So that is one of the biggest concerns. I don't want to get my best guess out there now, and in 2 weeks we're still dealing with this, and there's 10 other things we thought of. So as we go along, that stuff we'll be handling that as we move down the road. But we can go back in there and touch it again. My issue is, this is a new thing for everybody. We talk about a pandemic, we talk about a plan, we talk about being ready. But I can't remember in my lifetime where dine-in service was shut down. I can't remember it, and I'm an old woman. I just cannot remember that. And so even though we've shut down for snow for a few days, we've relocated for a hurricane, I have a pandemic. When I was in York, there's a very nice pandemic plan in there. I would recommend to everybody to pull that plan out and either work it or rework it. Start thinking, here you are in the middle of this. Are there things you would have done differently? And Steve, write that plan differently. So again, I think this is just going to be, we're going to have to realize this is a moving train, and we're going to have to take bits and pieces of information, and what is right today may very well be wrong tomorrow. And as long as we have open communication, we're posted on the website, we're sending out those situational things, we're doing phone calls every couple of days or as need be. I think that as long as we keep everybody informed and involved, and I would beg the provider network, just like what Lori was coming out with her associations, looking at this, how labor laws and how new information is being given to providers. If she's got information, we need it, and we can just send it on out. So I think that this is something where we're in this together. the provider community as well as the state government, because we are also providing direct care services to a lot of people. So we're in the same darn boat. But I think this is going to be, don't lose that phone because there's going to be stuff coming out. I'm just very grateful that we still have all that kind of stuff that we can use. Okay? Thank you.
One last slide.
We'll have more information next month.
You'll have more information probably in the next hour, the way this thing's going.
Before I do my last slide, Mr. Thomas, the young smart guy in the back, determined that we have 6,200 individuals in day programs.
Very good, thank you.
The last slide is a statement of the obvious. A major risk of loss of direct support professionals in regional centers and in the community through infection or self-quarantine. So far, we have good information in the regional centers. Our staffing levels have not gone down. We do have some adjustments with family situations due to schools being closed. That's something that we have to keep in mind because I think that's a major risk to the system if things unfold. And that whole building full of risk. Other than that, any questions?
So what would be our plan on the personnel issue for this problem that you just mentioned? Direct support,
Unfortunately,
like what?
BDSN has a lot of experience in how to handle short staffing over the number of years, and we're probably in our best staffing now than we've been in. So we're in a very high water mark. Obviously, the first thing is overtime, forced overtime. People at the regional centers redirect their assignments to support direct services. From our perspective, very private community realizes, this is one team, one fight approach, and that we have 170 people in this building, and although we have 40% people on telecommuting, everybody's been put on notice. We're going to start a training program. So in the worst case scenario, if we have to go out there and do housekeeping and food service to augment the crisis, we will. But it will probably be overtime as a first resort, and from a community perspective, it's truly all hands on deck to get through this.
Us do the same thing. And pulling in, we have to have,
I know that when you guys try to hire from the community, you've done some things along those lines, new hires. I know, we're gonna probably possibly be at a 20% unemployment rate in the state in the next, if this thing drags out, it's gonna be, tremendous. So just want to throw it out there, as looking at a push to hire people, because there's gonna be,
How
a
about
lot of people that are looking for work. And
that is being talked about across the country as to how do you got to balance this because
Yeah, I
you
know.
have those vulnerable people and you don't want to make sure,
Yeah.
So we're right now, just like the FBI fingerprint
Right.
sites are closing down. So how do we adjust to that? We serve very few children. The regional centers, FBI check everybody, but there's so few children there. So we're going to adjust our hiring practice so we don't have to do that. We can just do the quick online sled check and look at what training we need to get done in that first couple of weeks and get people through. Reach out to people who are unemployed, who might be in our area of expertise and say, come work for us and we'll put you to work. But we still have to have certain training out there that has to be done. But we're trying to look at which requirements can we speed up, do online, or
Yeah.
hold off until this is over.
Do we have an IT issue? Sorry, I've seen you guys talk. Do we have an IT issue that we need to do anything? Are we having any issues?
No, it's just,
Okay.
just the microphone moving, but if you
Oh, the microphone, is way down there.
Okay. Everybody just talk up. Is the internet.
Give me the mic cover.
Well, but I do think Future Blackboard actually makes an interesting point. I mean, if we have people who know that they will have that paycheck. I mean, we can't stop these folks from working, whereas somebody who is working at a restaurant right now is not getting a paycheck. It might be an interest, after all this is passed, there's definitely a approach to say, look at the people who didn't have their paychecks interrupted. That was part of our staff. That's kind of a selling point. When you talk about the difference for the person who said, well, I'd rather make my $15 at Walmart because I don't have to deal with this, but that Walmart's now shut down and they're not getting that paycheck. It's an interesting,
It is.
and again, it's somewhat mercenary. But the reality is when it comes to our staffing, we got to look for that because that's a problem that we have. People say, I'd rather go stock boxes at Walmart than change adult diapers.
Right.
So we have to find something else within our community.
It's a little
that-
more secure.
Yes, exactly.
Well, the other thing is, what we need to make sure we do is, I think Commissioner Blackwood was talking about during this crisis, if we have a problem, the only thing we can't let down, I mean, I think we'll have more people beating the path to our door. So we can get aggressive in the hiring, because I think that a now hiring sign is something you're not going to find in many places, whereas we're still doing it. We still have to go through those background checks, but we can just man up and do it as fast as possible.
As was true in the last issue that we had, our available pool of applicants as the economy gets worse expands.
Yes.
People are more interested in these sorts of positions.
It does it on its
Ability.
own too. I mean, anytime we have an issue,
Right.
this is when people start really banging down the door. But we do have this really long process of getting people hired. But actually, the truth is, we've become much better at it because of the original crisis. So we've already steered our boat for the headwinds. We have gotten like 1 day job offer type of thing where they go through all the interviews when they walk in the door. So we've shortened that. We can definitely shorten the training. There's certain things we have to have before they come on board, but we know that other agencies are not dealing with a whole lot of stuff out there. So we might have quicker turnaround time on our registry checks and stuff like that. And a lot of the things we can do as we can do OJT as we're doing that. So that we are looking to waive some of that stuff right now.
If we have an emergency, we could consider temporary employees.
Well, that's where they would be but the truth is, Barry, we actually probably have the actual positions open to let them in, right? For a lot of them. And then we can do the temporary employee thing too. Yes, we can.
So what's the crisis, like, communication plan when we get our first person that's test positive for coronavirus in one of our facilities? So what have
Are you talking about one of the provider networks?
Well,
Or one of ours?
ours first, because obviously that's where,
Rufus, you want to come up to the microphone, please?
because, I mean, like, what's like the protocol? What are we going to do? You know, I imagine we have to call, you know, just thinking through all that, because it's good.
Unless it goes beyond the federal call, nursing around the clock, and then direct care, train, and so our goal is to treat them in place.
So how are we able to get tests? Like,
Well, tell them how where
what's the
the
process
tests
for
are.
tests? Yeah, like, because obviously we have to have the test in order
Actually,
to.
ordered from our lab, so we've actually gotten some, kits.
Not kits, tests. Yes, we've got them.
And we submit them to the.
So,
And it would be quarantine.
okay.
We
yeah.
would quarantine, but we would not send somebody to the hospital unless they got beyond the care that we could provide. And having physicians and nurses there is very helpful. But we do have a lot of people with underlying medical conditions.
They have infection control nurses that are providing training about the effective use of personal protective equipment or PPE. But we have an adequate supply on hand, and so we're actually meeting multiple times a week via Skype with the facility administrators, so they have a good handle on protocols to serve someone. We have vacant dorms on campus, where if we have to isolate versus quarantine, we have contingency plans in place as part of our pandemic planning process. This is new for us, you know.
Yeah, I know.
A lot of things sound like they're practical, but, you know, we have a massive walkout staff or abandonment, you know, it may change the course of actions that we take.
there's been, so people with disabilities, of course, have been listed as like on the critical list for this virus. You know, it's on the 2-page document that the White House put out that were the 15 whatever day, whatever, the guidelines that they just, you know, gave out. When you look at the second page, you know, disabilities are one of the, you know, critical, most, you know, possibly affected groups. And so because of that, do we get any special, are we looking at anything special like money or funding or anything that would help us, you know, better serve and deal with a lot of these things, like from a financial situation, or that we could extend to some, you know, because we fall on that list. I just didn't know if there was something that.
Yeah, Mary's been engaging with Health and Human Services, so she can speak to, you know, any enhanced match that may come available. But I can tell you just from working with other state agencies, they recognize that the population that we serve is very special. And so from DHEC to first responders, a lot of folks are indicated that, you know, when resources become available or any special actions that can be taken to mitigate the spread of infection, they're always naming DDSN as, you know, an area that, not that we're going to get any special favors because all agencies are dealing with this at the same time.
Right.
And this is a really worldwide crisis, but, you know, everyone's working, you know, collaboratively together to pool resources to help those in need.
Right.
So just yesterday, one state agency said that we're looking at opening or trying to have emergency childcare for frontline workers.
Right.
So everybody's trying to think in
Right.
advance to be able to put resources in place to help, you know, people on the.
That is very much in its infancy stage.
Correct. And it may not come, but that's
Yeah.
kinds of conversations that are happening.
Yeah.
Because I'll be honest with you, you
Making
think
all of
about,
us think differently.
what's the bigger problem, 47 cases or every school closed? You know, right now it's every school closed because there's a lot of single parents out there with children. So that is our biggest problem. But, you know, having a medical staff at the centers is pretty much the best we can do to provide additional help for the folks at the center. Salibi Center probably houses our most, each center does have a medically fragile unit, but Salibi is the whole building is medically fragile. So before I went there, they took my temperature, they gave me went through the checklist. I wasn't, you know, because I went down there like last week and I went through the whole protocol. So they were already implementing all those protocols long before the state kind of shut down.
Yeah, and providers in the provider community, they're sharing resources regarding their pandemic plans. So there's a lot of collaboration, not just, you know, at state level, but in our provider network as well. You know, so are we prepared? We're as prepared as we can be today, but we might learn something new this afternoon.
The only other comment that I wanted to make was knowing that children are home more with their families that receive, you know, respite and personal care aid. Mary, I think you and I exchanged an email on this when you first sent me the email with your plan of first steps and all that stuff, I guess, a few days ago. So is there any discussion about increasing hours that families can get access to now that their kids are home 24/7, 7 days a week?
That is what Lori was talking about when we were trying to cap off of services.
Right.
The problem is finding the provider. We can take the cap off the service, but if the rest of
So,
it
no, if
is
a
not
respite
done.
worker is already seeing that family 10 hours a week, they're probably able to work more if.
They are, if they're actually going. That's the biggest problem. It's not, we can get the caps released. Lori's going to talk.
Yeah, so we have the ability in some circumstances to go ahead and increase services, and we have seen a lot of requests coming in this week already for things that are not over the cap. You know, somebody who got 10 hours a week and they want 20.
Right, well, they probably didn't know that they got 20, because a lot of times it's the caseworker if they tell you or not. I mean,
Sure.
there's been many.
Well, they can get that now.
So, right, so we're already seeing an increase and we're tracking that on a spreadsheet. Basically, I'm trying to track any requests that come in that are related to this so that eventually we can equate that to dollars and the amount of extra service.
Yeah, right.
The other thing is replacement services. So like some of the people who are in day services or who were in school, they're really looking for something else to help the family because now they're home all day. But we are seeing some increases in the Appendix K. What we did was we specifically addressed adding an increase for people who are displaced from the day service, right? Above the cap that's in the waiver. So yeah, we are doing that.
All right.
But if families are out there, if anybody's listening, and you get 10 hours of respite, you can reach out to your case manager. And case managers, I would encourage you to contact your families and ask them if their needs have changed as school's closed. Please do that. They can do that now. The problem we would run into is if we do have an issue with provider capacity as far as the respite sitters but if you've got a good provider and they're giving you 10 hours a week, you're right. They probably would not mind doing 20 hours a week. So I think that is something that is already within our purview to do.
Great.
That is not even requiring an additional waiver form or a waiver from a waiver or anything else. We can do that now.
More questions? Thank you.
All right.
Okay.
Moving on, State Director.
All right, well, because I'm going to, basically my stuff is more of the virus stuff, yay. I just want to say that, and I've said it before, but I need to say that we have to realize that the situation is fluid, changes hour by hour, and what we have to say very well may change tomorrow. We're going to give the best information that we can at the time we know it. I think it's better to give out what we know and then come back and say, well, what we said yesterday has just changed. I'd rather just do that and give you what I got and ask for forgiveness later. I think that's what we're going to have to do, including with our appendixes that we're sending out. Let's go ahead and do some of this stuff. And in this fluid situation, I think that CMS is going to be more forgiving than they are normally known to have been. We're working very closely with HHS on Appendix K to provide regulatory relief and increase access to services while we're in this situation. I know we're never going to make anybody 100% happy, especially since life has just been rocked for many, many people, and change is inevitable. DHHS is the way they're dealing with this. We're calling our situational reports. They issue bulletins. So that's how they deal with information coming out. So they're trying to prioritize their bulletins and dealing with kind of like frontline stuff first. So they've issued a bulletin on the maintenance of medications, which, people want to make sure their medications are coming through. Remote monitoring and social distancing, which was kind of like the first wave of this is what you need to do. And then the next bulletin is coming out. We'll focus on telemedicine for physicians and psychologists. Then after that, we're going to, the next bulletin after the telemedicine comes out is going to be pertaining to our services. So it's going to be the Appendix K. It's going to be early intervention. I know they're trying to do something with telehealth and early intervention to work with our families and work with the kids. And it can't be exactly the same because it's an in-person service. However, they want to get as close as they possibly can to make sure that they're helping families work with their child with a disability so that progress is not lost either during this time. So they're doing that, and I know they're working with other IDEA services, that bulletin. And the only thing I don't know the content of the bulletin. I know that it should be coming out very, very shortly, possibly over the weekend. So people who have the pop-up, the bulletins that come from HHS, you should be getting an email about that when it comes out. They might get it before I do.
Mary, do you know if the EIs have laptops? Do you know, like, there's a standard, like, everyone has a laptop or not?
It's up to the company. And since most of our EI providers are small private companies, don't know if they do, but most people nowadays have a phone, and they have they have iPads. And the problem we have is that when you do any kind of telehealth, you have to have a platform that's HIPAA compliant. And FaceTime and Skype are not HIPAA compliant. I mean, they might have a portion of their business that might be HIPAA compliant. Like there's a company called Zoom, which a lot of people use to do meetings over, right? Well, and that might even be free. Chris, is that even a free service for some things?
Very basic level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, but the HIPAA version is not free, and it never is. But there is a HIPAA platform that is on the state contract that we've already looked at. Chris has talked to them. They usually like a year contract. We said, will you work with us month to month? And they said, yes. So we're looking at about, to be able to incorporate, because the more users you have, the cheaper it actually is. So if we can band the state together and say, we're going to have, we want 1,200 licenses. So we have 1,200 users, it's about 25 grand a month. So this is something we might be able to actually help to move this along. And we're putting together a proposal to send over to the General Assembly, who's okaying all that money to go to DHEC for this, to see if we can tap into some of those funds too. Because even though we're getting a bump in our FMAP, am I saying our FMAP, it doesn't necessarily mean we're just going to have all this money sitting here, since we push so much of our cash out. So it's, we still have to look for every avenue to pay for stuff that we can. But we need to help the providers because they can't provide as much. So their revenue is definitely down. I'm not going to say, here, you got to pay X number of dollars a month to get a HIPAA compliant platform. We got to figure out a way.
Well, hopefully we can get some money from the federal government to do
Yeah.
that. Because if the federal government is going to be requiring, BabyNet services to be delivered, I mean, in however way, they're going to have to be creative in how they.
Right.
I mean,
Well,
I know
and we
we're
also
on
have to be
BabyNet, but-
creative on the Medicaid side, because most of our BabyNet services are paid through Medicaid in this state, that we have to make sure that that's allowable under the authorities of that service under Medicaid. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. I know that they're working on how do you actually provide the service. So, and remember that the Appendix K is not just for our waivers, it's for all the state waivers. So anything we do in one, he's got to do them in all. So we know that we're going to get the draft prior to it going to CMS. So we'll review that to see if there's any of the suggestions that we gave that did not get into the final cut, and then go fight for that. In the meantime, the boards need to be providing day program services if they can in the homes. They have day program staff. The staff can go in there, probably already supplementing in these homes anyway, to go in there and provide the plan that is already written for the individuals. You can apply it in another service, in another setting. Worst case scenario is we just get a lot of extra documentation on the day program side. Best case is that we're able to take that documentation and turn it into actual billables for us, which we need to do. So we're encouraging them to be doing that. They have to document in TheraP. And we're calling all the boards and all the providers to encourage that. And we're going to be in TheraP checking to see that that's being done. We need to continue monitoring goals, writing progress notes, all the things that we're supposed to be doing anyway. There's no reason why that can't stop or be done remotely. We're going to be working on guidance, should be coming out either today or tomorrow, about electronic signatures, or not even electronic signatures, just verbal signatures. You talk to the family, you document, spoke to them, and then as soon as this is over, and hopefully it's over fast, you get out there and you get your signature, and you're not going to be held at harm for that. So that's where we're going with that. In the community, we're tracking about 5 cases and in the community and 1 here. Those cases are, I bumped into somebody who very well might have the virus, but even that person that they bumped into has not had a confirmed case. Okay? So that, you know how it is, right? It's almost like, I call it the third cousin twice removed theory, or 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. So however
Well, if you don't fall in that critical group,
yeah.
you're denied a test. Because
And then also, when we talk about
know.
people with disabilities, there are people that have disabilities that are perfectly healthy people. There's not any underlying medical, conditions. So those folks, and really looking for those underlying medical conditions that they are at much higher risk of not just catching the virus, but complications after the virus, that they're going to have to be part of the big hospital push, that you're going to be in the hospital, you're going to be on a respirator, that kind of stuff. So for a lot of people, this is, a virus. But for those who are ill, it is much more than just a virus. So,
Is there any way for us to request that the workers in our homes be tested for more than the general public, just because they serve a community that's so, kind of like a healthcare worker?
From what I understand,
they're getting tests
they're not getting pre-tested unless they have symptoms, because the problem with that test, if you just globally tested everybody.
Periodically, not because if you get tested today, you might get it 2 days later. So periodic.
Well, it's about fever more than anything.
Well,
I don't know that they
it's
know.
about having.
That's one thing about it.
It's about having enough of,
They're saying
well,
people are carriers, they don't know it.
well, no, general testing is not being done for anybody.
Yeah.
The good news is I asked for, and we got tests at the centers. So the minute we see a symptom, we can actually test for it. Because if you don't have a symptom, even if you test, you might not you're not going to get a true answer on it. Because you haven't built up enough of whatever's going on, the virus, to actually show in a test. I'm not a medical doctor, so, but we are not just testing prophylactically, is what you're saying. We are testing as symptoms come up. And symptoms of this could be symptoms of sinusitis, bronchitis, there could be a lot of other things too. So.
Yeah.
But we do have, we have just gotten, and I'm, monitoring the phone, we have just gotten word that we have one staff at a provider, so a community provider, who has tested positive for the virus and is in the hospital. But she has underlying medical conditions and she's older. So we have got, so let's be thinking about her too. So they're of course got that location on lockdown and who she had contact with. They're doing the investigation as you're supposed to. And we've learned of all these things through our critical incident reporting system. Most of the time, the providers are just picking up the phone and calling and saying, hey, look, had somebody who might have bumped into somebody. We're learning about it that way too. The regional centers are going well so far. And I need to say thank you for all the staff who's over there working, showing up every day and doing their job. We've been doing screening of visitors, but now we have restricted visitors to the regional centers. And I want to thank the families for cooperating. I know it's hard not to go visit your loved one. It's hard for people who have family in nursing homes and assisted livings not to go visit. We're working on getting technology out there like iPads so they can have virtual visits with their family member. And I think that would help ease some of their concerns. But it's just at this time, we really do have to lock down the number of people coming and going. It's enough with staff. We don't need even more people in the facilities. As far as the providers go, the boards are getting the payment as we spoke before. So right now, it's more of monitoring their staffing, more of monitoring, if we have any cases going in there. Early intervention service right now is my biggest concern. Case managers can still do their job virtually because it's allowable. EIs, we have more of an issue of finding out what Medicaid's going to allow us to do versus the telehealth kind of method. I am very, very hopeful that will be answered very shortly in a positive way. And we already talked about the HIPAA compliant platform. If we are going to be paying for that, I'm going to be looking for funding, don't get me wrong, but I don't want to wait on all the red tape because I know that all the stuff can be retroactive to what you're doing. So I will bring to you if it's going to, if this is going to go on above my spending allowance, but right now $25,000 I can approve. So, and I will. Here we're working on telecommuting as we can, getting folks in for situational reports. And, but our central office, our executive team just feels extremely important. We feel that it's important unless there's an underlying medical condition that if we got sick, it'd be super serious, that we show up, that we're here, and that we're here to answer questions and have a physical footprint here. Yesterday, we know that a lot of information is coming in, but we want to establish, and again, I will tip my hat, which if I was wearing one, to Pat Maley because I've usurped all his language. we're getting into a battle rhythm. And how are we going to do things every day so we know what we're going to do? Because again, when you get hit with information from every corner, how you synthesize that and how you get it out is extremely important. So I want to get into I don't like doing things from a point of hysteria. I like doing things from this is my plan. I can have 15 plans, but as long as I have one, I feel good. And this is what we're doing every day. So we're going to have a quick briefing in the morning at 9 a.m. coming in and writing our to-do list for that day. So if it's getting out, we got to get a notice out because we're going to have a teleconference that afternoon, or we're going to get a notice out because we're going to have a Skype meeting, or we're canceling something, or we're scheduling something. We're going to do a to-do list every day. And then basically go do our work. And as information comes in mid-afternoon, we huddle back up, make sure we get it all done. But every morning, we're just going to sit down and brief it, make sure every area's got their communication and every person's got their to-do list, and then we go and do our work. But we are going to have a touchstone each morning. Provider network communication, we'd like to phone a minimum weekly, more as the situation demands it. So if we have big changes, we're going to have that call more often. Last time we had a call, we had 170 people on that call. So we know that they want to hear, so we will do that. So when we get the bulletin and we know what Medicaid's going to be doing, we're going to be scheduling a Skype call to get that information out and to get all the questions. We're sending out the situational report every other day, unless, of course, something demands more of a larger footstep and a footprint. And and every other day we want to answer questions. So what we do is we collect questions and then we write the answers to them and then we post them and we send them out in a report. For you all, we're going to send those situational reports. If we need to schedule a meeting or something needs to happen, you're going to get information immediately so we can have a proper notice if we need to call the group together to get that done. Right now, I don't foresee anything, but there very well could be. Maybe as we're going through and working with HHS on whatever we're working with them, if we need your approval on stuff, we'll get there. Internal communication, again, I said daily briefing, ad hoc meetings if necessary, enterprise-wide Skype meetings. We have one next week, and I plan on doing that pretty much every other week just to keep the whole group, because we have so many people that are telecommuting, just to kind of bring everybody together and make them feel as one team. I think it's a good way to bring folks together. And I'm on national calls probably 2 to 3 times a week, where there is not a question that was asked in this room today or a thought being presented that I have not heard from all the other states. Now they're even including DD directors and Medicaid directors on the same call. So I think that it just shows that this is something that first time for everybody dealing with this, and there's a lot of good information out there. So we're also putting information on our site just for our folks, for the individuals that we support. There's a booklet that the state, thank you, Rick Magner, whose daughter works at the state library. She's a librarian there. She sent this out as a booklet for our individuals. So if day programs or residential programs are wondering what do they talk about with their folks, there's a booklet right online that they can use. And Oregon put together a quick video for our individuals. So they have given permission for everybody to post that on their websites, and folks can go and look at the video. And it was made geared toward the folks that we support. So that is another resource that people can have. That's basically my report.
What is DD directors?
The developmentally disabled. So sometimes folks call it intellectual disabilities and some call it developmental disabilities. But our national organization is DD.
So it's not, so we call it intellectual and they call it.
Yeah, it's 6 to 1, half dozen of the others. It's the same terminology. Sometimes they'll even go out DD/ID directors, but our national organization is National Association of Developmental Disability Directors, something else, but I think that's pretty close. Oh, NASD.
Any other questions? Just in response to what Mary just said about the battle footing for our purposes, I want to thank the executive staff. I want to thank Mary for keeping us in the loop on this stuff. Reminder for all of us that our inquiries are to go through Mary if we have a question, not to be going to these folks because they need to be focused on their job working with the crisis right now, and that Mary is to be the filter on that. And to assure Mary that if you need to tell us, I need to not be focused on answering that question, that you'll get that space, okay? Just
I
so that we
appreciate
can,
that
so
more
that
than
we
you.
can do everything to let you guys focus on what you need to do. And if that means if we're getting into it, if we need to reschedule a committee meeting, because it's just not, it's not the priority to look at this policy when we're still doing, if we're getting to that point in early April, let's, let us know. Don't hesitate to tell us we need to focus more on this right now and less on the sort of routine business as it need be, okay? So you guys have that, you have that power to let us know that, okay?
And on behalf of the staff
Yeah.
and myself, I just want to say thank you for all the support, because that is, I think that history has that we are very concerned about what the commission is thinking and what they want. And sometimes it's nice to be able to say, you know what, I can't get to that right now.
And
I'm really
that's,
sorry, but
in
I can't do it.
particular, right, in particular right now, I think I'm going to speak for everybody here, but just to say, you guys handle this side of things. You're doing a great job of it. If you need to tell us to get out of your way to some extent, let us know, right? And I just want that to be known.
Well, since we have been through a few hurricanes and now do this, but I think that, Robin, you were here on this go round. My MO is I'm going to give you information. I'm going to try to get it out every day. I might not be able to do that, but you will, if there's a big bump in the road, you're going to know about
And
it.
we appreciate that. Again, it's just like I said, just more, if you need to tell us,
Yeah, that right now.
absolutely. Just because we're focused on, let's focus on what we need to over the next 6 to 8 weeks. Run through it. Okay. Other comments about that? All right. I don't think there's any need to go into executive session. There were no matters for executive session. The next regular meeting is April 16th, pending whatever happens. So again, we'll communicate about that. But barring anything else, we'll be back here on April 16th, and we'll address, again, at that point in time, where we're at with other people coming in, having people watching remotely and things like that, as we get a little bit closer to that date. Any other business to bring before the commission at this time from anyone?
So there is no executive session today?
No executive session today, correct?
Thank you.
Yes.
I move we adjourn.
We have a second.
Second.
All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you, folks.